This is CBS 42 College Football Saturday. Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
What can you say about Tua and the performance he had today?
I mean, he deserves the Heisman, honestly, I believe. He's the best player in college football. He balled out and did what he always does.
Well, I'd say 6 touchdowns in the Iron Bowl. Pretty good for Tua Tagovailoa, trying to make his stamp on the Heisman Trophy. Hey, Nick Saban just stepped up to the postgame podium live. We'll take it right now.
Get in and have a positive play as well. So we've been able to accomplish what we have, yes, but there's many, many things that we need to do better on both sides of the ball and special teams.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.
Good little segue there. The question before, Mike Johnson's officially made it in the world. He got referenced in a Nick Saban press conference. Very bipolar there. Happy, smiling. He was upset about a couple of things, and it had to be about that first half.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was, and I'll even add on to that. I thought he was a little bit introspective. I mean, he was kind of reflecting back, and obviously a lot of the questions surrounding kind of the senior day and looking back on some of the guys. But you're right. There was a little bit of irritability off the top with Nick Saban about some of the penalties. And did you notice he didn't really complain about the officials?
No.
He said, I'm upset that some of our players put themselves in those situations. Well, I wish there's a lot of other fan bases and coaches that would take a cue from Nick Saban on that one instead of blaming officials, talking about all those things. Some of the players, yes, some ticky-tack calls along the way, but really put themselves in some bad situations along the way.
You know what he's looking at. He's looking at the first half next week against Georgia. If they play that way, Alabama may have to have a better second half than they did tonight against Georgia, because that is going to be the test of the year again here on CBS 42. This one, Alabama, the biggest spread that we've had in this game since 2012 when they were a 34-point favorite. Didn't seem like any issue coming in because Tua Tagovailoa very early. He's getting introduced to the rivalry, Mike, lowering that shoulder.
I love it. And listen, anytime he runs the football, you get a little bit scared about that knee injury, but obviously lowering the shoulder and getting in, big deal.
Clearly a lot healthier than he was about a month ago, but Anthony Schwartz answers late in the first.
Yeah, and listen, off the top, Auburn was kind of able to go blow for blow with Alabama. They continued right there.
Still 7-7, early second. How tough was Henry Ruggs all day?
Henry Ruggs is incredible. Honestly, this entire wide receiver core and the running backs today played with a chip on their shoulder. It was nice to see.
It's 17-7, but Auburn gained some momentum on a blocked punt. They get it inside the 25, and not long after that, we're late in the second quarter. They really need points, so what does Gus do? Oh, he calls Gus plays.
He dials it up. Listen, some of the trick plays worked today, some of them didn't, but boy, Bryant Denny Stadium got quiet right here.
A double pass from Ryan Davis, Malik Miller, 23 yards, and folks, it's 17-14 at the half. That's why Saban was upset. But Jerry Jeudy, this is so impossible to stop.
I mean, it's an unbelievable route. It's unbelievable separation, and Tua throws an absolute dart right there.
24-14. We've seen this script before because that's where Alabama distances themselves. Next drive, Josh Jacobs. What athleticism here? Are you kidding me?
Josh Jacobs is my favorite player on the Alabama team. I probably shouldn't say that, but he is my favorite player on the team. He's unbelievable.
33 yards out of the backfield. You thought that was good. What about Jalen Waddle?
No, that's an unbelievable play right there. And that was actually Henry Ruggs.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Henry Ruggs,
comes down, puts his butt in the end zone. A little bit of miscommunication from the referees, but what an absolutely incredible catch.
That one made it 45-21. I misspoke. Waddle made it 38-21. The moral of the story was Alabama scored points at will in the second half. And, Mike, you even said yourself during the break at half when we were talking that it was a little concerning for Alabama because it's a rivalry game and you find yourself in close spots, and it could have been a lot worse. But overall thoughts on the second half compared to what we saw in the first half?
Well, obviously a lot of explosive plays, and they still have to shore some things up. When you look at the assignments, they had a little bit of rough patches in there in terms of really the way they were defending the run and some of the interesting formations that you got out of there. Gus Malzahn brought to the table. They cannot afford to do that next week. They can afford to do that today. They made Auburn's offensive line and scheme look really, really good at times today. Cannot afford to do that next weekend against Jake Fromm, Jim Chaney, and that Georgia offense.
We will have Gus Malzahn's press conference in its entirety coming up here in a little bit. But first, let's go down to the field with some reaction more from Simone Eli and Chris Wrinkle.
Stand by, guys. Yeah, what a game, and specifically what a second half here, Simone, as this game was coming close. We thought maybe Auburn was going to test Alabama down the stretch, but especially that third quarter is when this Alabama offense came alive, too, with 3 touchdown passes in the quarter alone, and really everything seemed to kind of click for Alabama.
Yeah, Wrinkle, you're absolutely right. It was the tale of two halves, especially for the Tide. The defense settled in. They were better on third downs. They only allowed 7 Auburn points in the second half, and I think that's where we really saw a difference. Of course, Tua was fantastic, but it was clear that these coaches went into the locker room and said, this is where we can make a move on both sides of the ball, and it clearly paid off.
And you know what? You can tell what good teams do is how they adjust in the second half, because that's all coaching. The Alabama coaches going in saying, all right, here's everything Auburn's doing. We're going to fix it. And really the Tigers, their offense couldn't really get it going. Their defense played well in stretches, but Tua lit it up through the air. The first Alabama player ever to score 6 touchdowns in one game.
What I was wondering about Tua is everyone talks about this Heisman moment. He's got to have this Heisman moment. A lot of folks are saying, hey,
I think
what
it was
about
a collective moment, right?
Well, can you have a Heisman game? Because this might have been it. Tua was fantastic. We saw him on the touchdown run. Of course, he was a huge attack in the air as well. Tua just fantastic. Heisman game, in my opinion. But again, the defense also stepping up in the second half. I caught up with linebacker Mack Wilson after the game, and he said, hey, this is just another game. We got to move forward. How good does one feel, man?
I feels good. Just another game, you know. We're excited that we was able to come out and get a win. All the hard preparation we put in throughout the week, you know, it paid off, so congrats to us.
How much momentum going into Atlanta now?
It's just another game now, too. So we just got to go back tomorrow, see what we messed up on, and, you know, get the corrections and go out and improve next week and work even harder.
Hey, Jalen, nice touchdown pass. Jalen Hurts knows he's not going to talk to the media, just gives the whisper sign after I compliment him on his touchdown pass. But Mack Wilson with that Bama mentality on to the next game. They're already looking forward after a huge rivalry win.
And the 24-hour rule definitely in effect. Mack Wilson, by the way, notorious for tweeting late night after a game, already watching film. So I wonder how soon after he gets back to his dorm room or his hotel that he's going to start watching Georgia, guys.
Hey, Jalen Hurts just acting like he's a freshman, like it's 2016 again, not allowed to talk to the media. You know who is allowed to talk to the media is Gus Malzahn. We have his interview, his press conference in full coming up after the break. Where does Auburn go from here in the postseason? And you knew they had their work cut out for them against the Tide. Auburn fought tough in the first half. We'll get Gus's thoughts on that coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday post-game, presented by Pepsi.
Alabama puts up 52 points against Auburn in the most lopsided Iron Bowl we have seen since 2012 when the Tigers just won 3 games. That was the year that Gene Chizik got fired. In came Gus Malzahn. And for Gus, it was a tale of 2 different seasons. Who would have thunk a year ago they could be sky high, beating Alabama #1, going to the SEC title game? He gets a massive contract extension, and then only 1 year later, there are no answers for Malzahn, giving up 52 points in the game. Here's Gus in his entirety afterwards.
Okay, starting out the game, first half, I thought we were in good position. I thought we did. I'm confident I'll be the head coach.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Okay.
Gus Malzahn is up against it, man. Every single time this guy has a brutal loss, he has to say, yes, I'm going to be the coach next year. And it's a guy who's going up against this Alabama recruiting machine where the Tide have better talent on the field. You saw it in that second half. It was clear. If you're Gus Malzahn, what more do you have to do to compete in this game?
Well, I just think that you have to weather the storm. I mean, that's the bottom line, and I know that's what Auburn fans don't want to hear at this point in time. Anytime you lose an Iron Bowl, it's a heartbreaking loss. But the fact of the matter is, Gus Malzahn's a quality coach. He really is. I know it's sometimes hard for Auburn fans to look through some of the things he says. He's a quality head coach. The problem is, just across the state, he's going up against literally one of the best recruiters and the best college football coaches of all time. He's going to have games like this. Gus Malzahn, as far as active coaches gone, has had more success than almost anybody in terms of college football coaches. It just so happens they have to play this game every end of November, and he's not going to win most of them. And right now he's battling a deficit in terms of talent. I have no doubt in my mind Gus Malzahn will get that Auburn football team back on track next year, but he definitely has his work cut out for him. And you're right, he always has to answer these questions.
That's what it is. It's talent. You look at the 22 starters on this team. Alabama has 8 5-stars. Auburn had 1. Top 100 players was 17-2. That's what Gus Malzahn is looking at right now the next couple of years against Alabama. He says he gives everything into this Iron Bowl. You got to believe the guy when he says that. Let's go over to Hillary Simon. She's out there partying with the fans. Simone, I know the game's been over for about an hour, but that does not mean the party over there is going to end anytime soon, right?
Oh, Chris, that means the party has just gotten started here. They have been so excited, obviously, since Alabama won. Andy, this is your bar that you built yourself.
It is.
What is it like to have all friends and even new friends here celebrating?
You know what it is? I mean, it's great. I mean, we meet new people, meet old people, and I mean, we just have a good time here. Yeah.
Have we welcomed any Auburn people?
Huh?
Exactly. That is the joke of, but it's such a neat setup they all have. And Tammy, where you came from, what area?
Tennessee.
Oh, and this is your group?
Yes, it's our group. We're Bama fans.
What does this mean to you to have this group now that you guys now even go on vacation together?
You can't even explain it. If I had to explain it, you would not understand.
Hey, Pat, I know we've talked a bunch of times. What was it like watching this game? What are your feelings now?
Oh, we were so excited because we were a little bit afraid. You never know with that group from down south. You just don't know what they're going to do. But we were just really excited because we like tiger meat.
That's right. Would you say, no matter how good either team is, what their score is, the Iron Bowl is win for all?
Well, it's a great series, no matter who wins or loses. Nobody wants to lose. We all want to win. But you always have a great time.
But y'all won.
We won. We won.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide, indeed. So a lot of fun here. But as you said, Chris, they are just getting the party started, basically, here. So we'll have more shown for you guys later. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, they sure did have a lot of tiger bait tonight. And suspect number 1 was the quarterback for Alabama. Did Tua Tagovailoa just sew up the Heisman Trophy? We'll talk about that coming up next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Well, Nick Saban certainly is making his case to be the greatest college football coach of all time. His career is not even close to being done if you take the hints from the coach. Already tied with Bear Bryant for overall national titles. He'll go for the lead this year, 2018, with 7. But beating Auburn in the Iron Bowl, while undefeated like they did today, hasn't always ended in a championship season for Alabama. In 1994 and 2008, the Tide would lose to Florida in the SEC title. They got Georgia next week. In 2016, the Tide would fall to Clemson in the title game. Only in 2009, Mike Johnson, the man standing right next to me, did you guys do the job? Is there any kind of correlation you can look at in how Alabama plays in the Iron Bowl? I don't want to say correlation, but the energy from the Iron Bowl, how do you sustain that going into the SEC title and then to the postseason?
Well, I think it's such an interesting dynamic, too, because you look at the Iron Bowl and you say, okay, we're going to try to treat it as just another game, but it just isn't. It's just not another game. And you saw Auburn come out and they threw everything they had at Alabama today to try to derail that perfect season from Alabama. So while I don't think there is a huge correlation, and I don't know that it projects the rest of the season, but you can see how much energy and focus Alabama possibly gained or lost today with the way they played Auburn. Now they have to line up and play once again in the SEC title game next week after an emotional victory over their in-state rival. I don't want to say it takes away from it, but it is tough to say, hey, we got a 24-hour rule and we've got to get back to it tomorrow and start watching film.
Well, in all honesty, it's really one of the only, let's call it 4 teams in the country they've played so far that have been a legit defense.
Yep.
That Alabama is going to face legit defenses in the SEC in the postseason. That's how you measure your success if you're Alabama. It's in this game. So that's why you have games like the Iron Bowl to be a barometer, not the previous 11 games that you played. Let's go back onto the field. Simone Eli is down there. We talked so much about Tua Tagovailoa and these, quote, Heisman moments. Simone, I think today was a pretty good moment there.
Yeah, Brees and Mike, I'm not a Heisman voter, but if I were, I would highlight this game for Tua Tagovailoa. His first start in the Iron Bowl, and he absolutely dominates. And these teams came into this game knowing what the spread was, but the bottom line is it's a rivalry, and they want to play as hard as they can. They want to beat, of course, their rival, but Tua, unbelievable. He's 25 of 32 for 334 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. He accounts for 6 overall. He's the first Bama player to ever do that in a single game. Tua, definitely a Heisman-worthy performance today against Auburn.
You know, I'd say there's a good amount of improvement, and there's still a lot of improvement to be made. You know, decision-making, where to go, where to throw hot. You know, but with the coaches that we have, you know, I'm really grateful. And they put us in the best position, you know, for us to become successful as a whole offense. So.
Two guys who win the Heisman Trophy are comfortable on the big stage, making the big plays. How comfortable are you when you're out there on the big stage?
You know, you're just playing football. For me, it's just playing football. You're just going out there, having fun, doing what I've been doing since I was little. So, it's just playing football.
Just playing football for Tua Tagovailoa. To the rest of us, it's really, really good football. Wrinkle, in your opinion, what more does he have to prove or do or show to convince everybody he is the Heisman winner?
I don't know if he has to convince anybody else. I think it is a 2-horse race, Kyler Murray and him, and I think he put some significant difference between Murray and himself in this game. I want to see him do this, though. I want to see him break the single-game passing record. He tied it tonight. He's come close a couple times, but he doesn't play the whole game, so he doesn't get a chance. If he did, he would have broken Gary Hollingsworth 1989 5-touchdown record he set against Ole Miss. I want to see him finally do it. I feel like every week we're talking about him maybe breaking it, but he came close again today. But I think the biggest difference in this game compared to the rest of the season for Tua is that he's healthy. Even when Auburn got pressure on him up front, like Mississippi State much did, they were trying to fluster him. The knee was fine. He was able to scramble. He didn't panic. He was able to move around a little bit better. I think that was the biggest difference for Tua. He's healthy, and that's a dangerous thing with this Alabama offense.
I think what Tua showed today is that, hey, he's not just a passer. Now, I know he only ended up with 20-some rushing yards, but a great rushing touchdown. He showed a lot of strength going right into the end zone. And then soon thereafter, a 21-yard gain where he scrambled. And Tua's had those moments throughout the season to prove that he is not just one-dimensional.
And the biggest thing that we're going to point out about this is an Auburn team that has struggled, but a top 10 Auburn scoring defense that this Alabama offense was able to put up over 500 yards. Guys?
Well, Wrinkle, here's another thing. The fact that Tua kind of needed this game. If you've noticed Kyler Murray the last 3 or 4 weeks, last night in particular, that guy has gone off for Oklahoma. Tua 3 weeks ago, he's getting banged up. His stats aren't so great. And he looks like a completely different player, as if he wasn't hurt against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I always chuckle at everybody asking about when's Tua's Heisman moment going to come, because his defense is forcing him into, I'm talking about Kyler Murray, his defense is forcing him into those Heisman moments. Oklahoma has to have those Heisman moments in order to go stride for stride with some of the teams they have played offensively. Their defense has not gotten it done. Tua today is able to, 25 of 32, 5 touchdowns, and he says, just out there playing football. It's absolutely unbelievable what the kid has done this year. His defense is not forcing him into those Heisman moments, but really the whole season as a whole has been a Heisman moment for Tua Tagovailoa. And you're right, he's back to health finally. He looks incredible. I'm glad to see him full strength going into next weekend.
Being a decent quarterback for the undefeated #1 team in the country gets you to New York. Being Tua Tagovailoa and his stat numbers is what wins you the Heisman Trophy in New York. He will certainly be a Heisman finalist. Not officially, though. We have to await for that announcement, here in the next couple of days. Jarrett Stidham on the other side had all the hopes in the world of being a Heisman Trophy candidate last year and this year. We'll see what happens with his future, but the Auburn quarterback got pummeled a lot today. Showed some guts with a couple of touchdown passes. Interview with Jarrett Stidham coming up on the other side of this break.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
And here we are back at Bryant-Denny Stadium, where the Alabama Crimson Tide have dominated the Auburn Tigers to win the 83rd Iron Bowl. And coming into this game, we thought it was a tall task for the Auburn Tigers to be able to come out of here victorious, but it was all going to lie on the shoulders of their quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. He was a key factor last year, and this year, well, it was a mixed bag of results for Stidham. 13 of 30 for 127 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He made some good throws. He made some bad throws. Really, the Alabama defense was able to pressure him quite a bit. They got to him 3 times for sacks. But other than that, Stidham was kind of running around, never really got his feet set. You could see some frustration building on the receivers and even his face because there were some wide open throws that he was able to miss. Now, that being said, he did still have a couple of good throws, including the touchdown to Darius Slayton. After the game, Jarrett Stidham, here he is reflecting on the loss.
Our guys in our locker room, they have fought all year. We've had so many ups and downs. You know, people don't even know, really how, a lot of people have felt in that locker room. And just to see everybody not give up on each other and really finish the season, it sucks that, this is, how the season's gone. But then again, I couldn't be more proud of those guys in that locker room. They come to work every single day. Work ethic has been there. Mindset every day. Practice every workout's been there. So I wouldn't trade these guys for anything.
Now, Stidham did say last week after the win to Liberty that he would reevaluate his future after this game. So the question is, this was the second Iron Bowl with the Auburn Tigers for Jarrett Stidham. Was it his last Iron Bowl, or will he be back here again next year to try and get revenge on the Alabama Crimson Tide? Still more to come here on CBS 42 as our post-game show continues from the Iron Bowl with the Alabama Crimson Tide victorious once again. We'll be right back.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday post-game, presented by Pepsi.
A whole lot of conference championships will be decided next week in college football. One of those is Conference USA. We already know UAB is in the title game for the West, but 2 questions. Who are they going to face from the East, and where will that game be played? Bill Clark on the verge of a historic season with UAB, and things looked pretty good early. They got 3 points early, but Middle Tennessee's quarterback Brent Stockstill came to play big time.
He's been downright incredible. I mean, he's one of the most efficient passers in the country over the last few weeks. I mentioned earlier before the show about what he did against Kentucky. He just continued right on through tonight.
This game got out of hand real quickly for UAB. They had a total of 90 yards on the day. That's it. -1 rushing. Final score here was 27-3. So UAB, they are licking their chops going into the title game. Where are they going to play? Well, they're going to play at Middle Tennessee again, back-to-back weeks, because FIU lost at home to Marshall, which means Middle Tennessee won the East. They have the tiebreaker over UAB for beating them. So you're a team going back there with 90 total yards. You got completely annihilated this week. Is there anything that you can learn playing a team back-to-back weeks and knowing how bad you got beat the first time?
Well, absolutely. You can go back to the film and you can look at it and say, okay, this is what went wrong with the football game. And the honest point is this. It's hard to beat one football team twice in 1 year. I mean, we saw that with Auburn last year with the rematch against Georgia in the SEC title game. But when you only get 89 yards and it's -1 yards rushing, then I think you start to ask a lot of questions about what exactly your game plan was and how exactly that can change moving forward. So I think UAB can definitely get it done. They've got enough talent. The defense is good enough to be able to go out there and get this done. But it's going to take a lot of work moving forward, and hopefully they can get this thing turned around in a hurry.
Now, Bill Clark is a semifinalist for National Coach of the Year. It would be a masterful job if he can get UAB back in this game with Middle Tennessee. Again, next Saturday, going to be at Middle Tennessee in Murfreesboro. We're not exactly sure what time the game will be at, but we'll keep you posted. We're not done here in Tuscaloosa. We're going up until 8 o'clock with all the player interviews in the locker room. We're going to be back after this as we roll on our post-game show.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday post-game, presented by Pepsi.
Well, this was the scene at Bryant-Denny Stadium prior to the game. Helicopters here near the field trying to dry the turf before the game. It was slippery against the Citadel. We saw a lot of guys not having great footing. did not want that to be the case, rather, against Auburn here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And the difference in this one really was second half adjustments by Alabama. The coaching staff doing a great job looking at film at halftime and saying, this is where we can attack this Auburn defense, because they came right out, went down the field on the first drive, and scored immediately. Tua Tagovailoa hooked up beautifully to Jerry Jeudy, who hadn't been in the end zone in a minute. It was a fantastic strike. A lot of folks saying, okay, was that a Heisman moment? What more do you want to see from Tua? He had some fantastic plays, and this Auburn offense knew exactly where to exploit, or the Alabama offense knew exactly where to exploit the Auburn defense again in the second half. We spoke with running back Josh Jacobs after the game.
It was huge. You could feel the momentum swing. Not only for the offense, you see the defense started making plays. Everybody started flying around. Even special teams was making plays. So it was huge to come out and start fast.
Two more questions. Should your quarterback win the Heisman Trophy?
I don't know. That's not up to me. I don't know. That's not up to me. I mean, in my eyes, I love what he's doing for us and our team. So right now, that's why we just focus on this next game and trying to execute against Georgia.
So Josh Jacobs won't say, hey, Tua should be the Heisman winner, but tight end Irv Smith, that's exactly what he said on the field after the game. He said Tua deserves it. He's the best player in college football. So Alabama offense makes some huge adjustments in the second half. On the other sideline, though, it seemed like Auburn struggled a little bit there.
Yeah, they struggled as a whole, but I think if you want to take a positive out of this game for the Auburn Tigers, it's got to be that offensive line. We've talked about them so much, losing 5 starters from last year, a lot of new faces, pieces moving around. Well, they just came out here. They won the rushing battle, albeit by a little bit, but they were able to run the football significantly. You saw that offensive line get some push. They were able to really protect Jarrett Stidham at times, and I think this was a major step forward for the Auburn offensive line.
I totally agree. I mean, this was a team that came into the season very without a lot of experience, I should say. You know, they came in not a whole lot of starts, not a whole lot of games under their belt after a lot of guys left the program due to graduation. So Auburn, again, getting a lot of experience, and I think that that's where this team improved throughout the season the most.
And really a step forward for this unit, for this offense, and a good thing going for the future.
You know, I mean, I thought overall we played well. Obviously, like, it's like everything. I'm sure you guys can say the same thing. Is we had some ups and downs, but ultimately, you know, Jarrett did a tremendous job this year. Coach Lindsay and Coach Malzahn, I thought, did an excellent job of calling the offense. And at times, you know, you look back at some games where it's a play away. You know, a fumble, a turnover, a sack, and we were so close this year. I think that's kind of what's frustrating. We got blown out every game. It's one thing, but you know, I think overall as an offense, we played well. And I think next year we have momentum going into next year that we're going to take the next step and ultimately kind of regain that hype right at the beginning of the year.
And you heard Jack Driscoll say it right there. Momentum going into next year, those faces coming back. Garrett Danielson told me yesterday, the offense is, if you don't have all the pieces together, it doesn't matter if you got a quarterback, a running back, an offensive line. You got to have it all. They got a lot of pieces coming back next season.
As Gus Malzahn says very, very often, there's nothing quite as important as experience. That's something they definitely gained in this game and throughout the entire year. A big positive for Auburn moving forward, guys.
Drive of the game, brought to you by your Central Alabama Honda dealers.
So we saw how close it was at the half. Alabama got up by 10 in the third, and this was a 4-play drive where you really start to feel like Alabama finally has the game in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. They come out and score in that first drive of the second half, and once they got the ball back, he said, okay, let's put the dagger in right here, and they were able to go out and do that.
You had heard Josh Jacobs a little bit ago. He was a workhorse on this drive for sure. Najee Harris got him for a first down there. That was crucial. And then how athletic is Josh Jacobs? Basically does a 360 to find the ball. He had 4 catches today.
This guy does everything, Priest. He's a fullback. He's a wide receiver. He's a running back. He covers kicks. He does everything for this football team. He's awesome to watch.
And to think he was a 3-star who they called a no-star before Alabama gave him a scholarship. He's one of those diamonds in the rough. You got to find the talent and have an eye for that. And then you also have to develop the talent. And that's kind of another, I think, maybe underrated thing with Nick Saban is the fact fact that he finds guys who maybe don't deserve to start,
Right.
and then you're a stud.
Well, he's
Kinda
unbelievable.
Like
yeah, he's unbelievable at scouting some of these guys. And listen, that's why Nick Saban finds these players. We mentioned earlier, all these 5-star players, all these guys that Nick Saban obviously recruits, it's also development. It's also his ability to go out and watch film and say, what do I want out of a running back? And a running back group that is filled with Heisman Trophy candidates and all the things you've seen for the last 10 years, Josh Jacobs really sticks out as a guy who's willing to put it on the line for his football team. That's what Nick Saban loves about this guy.
Unsung heroes make national champions. Josh Jacobs is one of those players itching for another national championship at Alabama. Time for another break here on the Postgame Show. We're still working on more player sound and other games around the country that are going to shape the college football playoff. There were a couple big ones this weekend. It's coming up on the Postgame Show.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Purdue and Indiana are fighting for bowl eligibility and the Old Oaken Bucket. The Boilermakers also fighting for somebody else. They take this one home 28-21. And after the game, Tyler Trent, who has captivated the entire country with his story of terminal bone cancer that has spread to his spine, celebrating a moment with his team that he will never forget. Purdue getting to 6 wins. Jeff Brom, is he going to be the coach next year, is the major question right now for Purdue. Staying in the Big Ten, Michigan and Ohio State. We already know Northwestern from the West will play in the title game, but will it be Michigan or will it be Ohio State? The way the entire season has looked, Mike, you thought Michigan's game to win here, but they couldn't stop Dwayne Haskins to save their lives.
Isn't it really unbelievable the way Don Brown's Michigan defense has looked the entire season? Urban Meyer and company were still able to put a game plan together to pick them apart.
That block punt helped in the third quarter, 34-19, and then Mike Weber, who's a Michigan guy himself, makes it 41-19. Mike, if Jim Harbaugh's not going to beat Urban Meyer right now, is he ever with the way that Urban's recruiting?
I don't see it, and obviously there's a lot of questions about Urban Meyer back in 2019 or not back in 2019. Jim Harbaugh just cannot, for whatever reason, seem to solve the puzzle that is Ohio State.
It may not matter. Ohio State 62 points, the second most they scored all year. And if you don't include Oregon State to start the season, that's the most points and yards they had all season long. So Ohio State going to the Big Ten championship game next weekend in Indianapolis against Northwestern. Back in the SEC, Georgia trying not to sleep through their rivalry game with Georgia Tech. Last thing you want to do is look bad, and Georgia Tech, they look pretty good early. This goes to the house 100 yards. It's a 14-7 Georgia lead. Don't sleep on Georgia Tech, but Georgia basically came right back out from that and said, enough of this. We're getting ready for Alabama. We mean business. And Jake Fromm, he's been wishy-washy all year, but making plays when he needs to.
Yeah, anytime the running game is working for Georgia, really that is the key as far as Jim Chaney's offense goes. The running game's working. Jake Fromm can hit some of these pass plays over the top. They really didn't even have a hiccup in the first half on offense. They were able to do whatever they wanted to do.
This one is Fromm to Miko Hardman, 44 yards. Dogs win big time, 45-21, so no hiccup for them. Going to Atlanta for the SEC title game. Again here on CBS 42. Elsewhere in the SEC, Florida is playing for a New Year's Six bowl, perhaps. Florida State is trying to be bowl eligible and keep that streak of 35 years going. And Florida, they were a little sluggish to start, but after they got about through the second quarter, it wasn't really an issue. Felipe Franks to Josh Hammond there, 20-7 Gators. And really no problems for them. You know, Florida State's going to play tough, but Willie Taggart's got a long way to go.
Yeah, listen, with all apologies to the LSU game that Florida won earlier in the year, I think this is one of the biggest wins of the season for Dan Mullen and company because they go on the road and they get it done in a rivalry game. A huge stamp of approval from that Florida fan base right now.
Final score, Florida 41, Florida State 14. Florida State has not had a 5-7 season in a very long time. You got to wonder when Willie Taggart starts to feel the pressure down there in Tallahassee. So we know the SEC is set. We know the Big Ten is set. What about this Ohio State Buckeye team? Forget about the playoff right now with Oklahoma and that whole debate, because we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Just the fact that Ohio State can be so up and down. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's just the fact that you have no idea what you're going to get even next week against Northwestern.
Yeah, when you deal with the issues that Ohio State has dealt with this year, and listen, no matter what you think of Urban Meyer, these kids did not want to be in this situation. So they've dealt with some consistency issues as far as what they've put out on the field. But we know they have talent. We know they have a great coaching staff. We know they have great scheme. And when you're playing a rivalry game and everybody is focused on that single task of beating your rival the way they were today against Michigan, you cannot be stopped. And they were not stopped today against a top 5 defense in the country in Michigan. Ohio State was just able to do whatever they wanted to do with Dwayne Haskins and company.
They want to and need to make a statement to this playoff committee, because you told me today, Ohio State making the playoff, there's a reason why they're number 10 right now. They need statements. Heck, they could have scored 70 points on Michigan today if they wanted to. They need a statement next week, too.
Yeah, they definitely needed to make a statement today, and they're going to have to make that statement next week against Northwestern in that championship game. I really think that if Ohio State could have done better defensively, if you wouldn't have seen 39, 40 points put up by the Michigan Wolverines, maybe Ohio State looks a lot better to the committee. But with that game being so out of hand defensively and really being kind of a shootout, I don't know if they made up much ground as far as the college football playoff rankings go. A lot of ground still left to be made up next week in this championship weekend.
You know what would help is if Oklahoma lost to Texas in the Big 12 championship game in Dallas next week. That would almost shoo in Ohio State to make the playoff if, of course, they beat Northwestern. So all those games you just saw all have a chance to be one of our 3 nominees for Game of the Week. It's the wrap-up show. We're nominating them tonight at 10:30. You can go vote on our Twitter page, CBS_42. Again, that'll be tonight on our wrap-up show. Mike and I are coming back with more thoughts from Alabama and Auburn, and to talk more about Alabama and Georgia next week in the SEC Championship game. We're back.
Show your spirit. Crafted by Clyde Mays.
And earlier today, Deshaun Davis one last time with Thomas Phillips, the 6-year-old kid that he has such a special connection with. Simone Eli told us their story earlier in our pregame show. You can find that on our website, cbs42.com. But Deshaun Davis was going to have to leave this Auburn defense if they wanted to upset the Crimson Tide against this high-powered Alabama offense. And for a while, the Auburn front 7 did their job. Gary Danielson said if they're going to stop Tua, it's going to have to happen with their talented defensive linemen. And they were able to get a little bit of pressure on Tua, make him move around. Unfortunately, Tua was healthy, so it wasn't as effective as Mississippi State a few weeks ago we saw them be. But they were able to really lock down that rushing attack of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Nick Saban says so often that he wants balance on his offense. Well, they didn't have it in the first half, and you could tell that was really frustrating this Alabama offense. Second half, they had to let it fly with Tua, and, well, it was a different story. But it wasn't because of the Auburn front 7. They did their jobs. They were able to keep Damian Harris and the rest of the running backs in check. And this Auburn front 7 going out on a high note despite the score.
What hurt me more, man, I just feel like me being a leader and me being a captain on this team and a defensive captain, I'm really bummed out that I wasn't able to compete with my brothers. This is my senior season, my last ball, and I really wasn't able to go. I felt like I was actually trying to fight through it and trying to, be the warrior that I am. I felt like I was a liability on the field.
This Auburn defense is going to have a lot of new faces when they come back next season, but the way that they've recruited, it'll be a reload on that Auburn defense and with some high expectations coming in next year. Well, still to come on College Football, our postgame show. When we return, Simone Eli will talk about the Alabama defense and the second half adjustments the Crimson Tide had to lead them to victory over the Auburn Tigers. We'll be right back.
The Spectrum High Speed highlight of the game.
Tua on the left side goes to Jerry Jeudy, has separation, makes the grab, he's walking in, touchdown Alabama!
That's 2 national finalists right there. Tua Tagovailoa up for best quarterback in the country, and Jerry Jeudy up for best wide receiver in the country. That was in the second half. That's when Alabama starts to show why they're number 1 and has so much depth as the number 1 team in the country. 52 points against Auburn's defense. And Simone Eli back with us live. Not only adjustments on offense, it was defense too, because when Auburn scored to start, or going into the half, you knew they meant business, didn't you?
Yeah, Brees, you're absolutely right. Neither one of these teams bought into the margin that everyone was talking about going into this game. Alabama knew they had to come out strong. Auburn was not going to come into this game being afraid, being the underdogs. They wanted to play well, and they did in the beginning of the game. But the Alabama defense settled in, especially in the second half. We saw the adjustments on defense. They held Auburn to just 7 points, none in the fourth quarter. They came out on an absolute mission. They picked off Jarrett Stidham as well. We're much better on third downs, and that really was the difference maker, on top, of course, of the fantastic offense from Tua Tagovailoa. The ground game great as well for Alabama, but that defense was locked down. It's the defense that we've seen throughout this entire season. Now they will have another SEC test, the last one against Georgia. Of course, the rematch everyone is looking forward to in Atlanta next week. It's going to be a lot to look forward to. We'll have more on the CBS 42 College Football Iron Bowl special. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Two teams expected to cruise into the playoff, maybe having a little trouble right now. Notre Dame, it's very early at USC. They're down 7-0. Clemson, only a one-score game over South Carolina. Those rivalry games, man, I'll tell you, it's 28-21. They're about to go into halftime, though. Clemson is driving in that game. Okay, so you've seen what's happened earlier with Ohio State shellacking Michigan. Clemson and Notre Dame are in progress right now. Alabama's win was easy. Oklahoma beat West Virginia last night. Before we go into the playoff, what do you think it looks like tomorrow? Is Georgia number 4 now instead of Michigan's out, obviously? Is it Georgia or is it Oklahoma? I think there's a case for Oklahoma because of their win.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a case for Oklahoma. Here's what I'll say, though. If the committee's smart, realizing that Georgia and Alabama face off next weekend, they'll move Georgia up as high as they can. Go ahead and slide Georgia up to number 4, because you know that obviously that's going to work itself out next weekend anyways. I think the case will be made for Oklahoma, and the College Football Playoff Committee will probably look at it and say, hey, it's a week-to-week basis. But I'm just telling you, in the back of my head, if I was them, I might slide Georgia up in that 4 slot. Just say, hey, this can pan itself out next weekend.
But here's a dilemma. What if Georgia and Alabama is really close? Oklahoma and Ohio State don't look good, and they don't value those wins. Could you really put Georgia in at number 4, even if it's a close loss?
Yeah, it's tough to foresee. And the problem is, if Georgia has 2 losses, how do you separate Georgia and LSU? Yeah. I mean, both those guys have obviously would have lost to Alabama, and LSU beats Georgia over the top, even though they made it the SEC title game. It's going to be an interesting dynamic to see it work out, and it looks like we're headed for a lot of havoc, the same way we were last year, splitting hairs.
We're hoping for it. The committee certainly is not hoping for any chaos. They want all these favorites to win, that is for sure. Alabama and Georgia, one thing is clear, that the winner of that game is firmly in the college football playoff. And speaking of, we're going to dissect it for basically the first time now that the Iron Bowl is over. It's Kirby versus Saban, part 2. We all know what happened last time.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday Postgame, presented by Pepsi.
Well, the last game here in Bryant-Denny Stadium, of course, calls for senior night. Tide seniors taking the field and getting honored with their families prior to kickoff of the Iron Bowl. A great moment for a lot of these guys. Not a lot of seniors on the team, because a lot of them, of course, go to the NFL after their junior seasons, but there were a couple guys out there, Jonah Williams of the likes, and you better believe that this senior class is going to go into this week putting the Iron Bowl win behind them. They might enjoy it for a few hours, but it's on to the next one. That's the mentality of these guys.
Well, this senior class, think about all they've been through. They've gone to a national championship 3 straight years. They've won 2. They lost 1. They're hoping to end their careers with another national championship ring. But in order to do that, first they got to get through the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC championship. And if you want to talk about it, Michigan said that they have the revenge tour. Georgia doesn't need a whole tour. They need 1 game, and it's this next game against the Alabama Crimson Tide, because I can guarantee you, when you lose like the Georgia Bulldogs did in the national championship game, they want another whack at Tua and this Crimson Tide offense. Nick Saban knows that all too well, knows the guy on the opposite sideline, Kirby Smart, isn't going to rest, and Nick doesn't want his team to rest either, says they got a lot to work on before they square off against the Bulldogs.
I think that we're pleased that we've been able to score as many points as we have. I think we set a record or whatever. I think but satisfied. You know, there's always things that you can do better. And obviously, you know, we didn't play very well last week in the first half. There were some things that we didn't do very well today in the first half. We didn't run the ball very effectively in this game, which I think we have to have balance in our offense. So there's always things for us to work on. Am I disappointed in anybody? No. Am I pleased that we've been able to accomplish what we have? Yes. But there's many, many things that we need to do better on both sides of the ball and special teams.
And you know Nick Saban loves this more than anything. His teams are winning, but they're not perfect yet. There's those little things he can point to. Hey, we were tied against the Citadel. Hey, Auburn was only down by 3 at the half. You know that's his perfect scenario for
yes,
his team.
Nick Saban always putting the bait out there for his guys, something else to achieve. And guess what? Next week they're playing in a game they didn't play in last year. If you think about it, it's crazy. Guys, back to you.
Well, here's the deal why it's so great. Alabama always wins their game with talent. Georgia has talent. They always win their game with coaching. Georgia has coaching. So this is a football game where you have to go out and execute and make plays, and that's why I think a lot of people are worried that this can be a really close game.
I agree with that. I think when you look at the matchup, too, when you look at the fact that, listen, look at Alabama's run defense today. Auburn had one of their best days of the year on the ground in terms of that run defense. Georgia is going to run right at you, and they have a better running game than Auburn ever thought about having here in 2018. So when you look at it, Elijah Holyfield, DeAndre Swift, a number of running backs they have for Georgia, a lot of talent, some 5-star talent along that offensive line, a lot of big fellas up front. They're going to try to lean on this Bama defensive line. I think it's going to be a very tough task for Nick Saban to be able to put up a game plan that's going to limit Georgia's offense next week and the talent they have.
They'll have better pass protection, that's for sure, and they'll have the home field advantage. Athens and Atlanta not very far away from each other at all. Don't get me wrong, Alabama will have their people come into the game, but it might feel like a maybe 60-40 feel with Georgia having home field advantage in that game. Definitely. Auburn was in that game last year. They know what it's like to play Georgia in the SEC title game. 2018 is a year they want to forget completely about, but what about the postseason this year? What's the likelihood of Auburn bowl game? Where are they going to go and who are they going to play? We'll discuss that next.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday post-game, presented by Pepsi.
Well, the Auburn Tigers end another season with 5 losses. That's a multiple now for Gus Malzahn. You think back to 2015 and 2016. 7-5 is not the benchmark. It's the low that they never want to see again with Malzahn. They're going to try to right that ship. But as for the postseason, everybody always says, Mike, you always build off of what you did in the postseason. 3 bowls that we're looking at for Auburn are going to be Liberty Bowl, Texas Bowl, Music City Bowl. And you got to think the teams they're playing on paper, they got to have better talent then.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you look at it and listen, the Texas Bowl, first and foremost, a lot of people projected maybe a West Virginia against Auburn matchup there in that Texas Bowl. I think that would excite a lot of Auburn and SEC fans for that matchup to possibly come to fruition when you see that Auburn defense lining up against that West Virginia offense. So there are definitely some good opportunities out there for this Auburn football team. Hopefully they can show up and represent the SEC the way we want them all to.
Yeah, you could see them play a Big 12 team in the Texas Bowl, which is their allotted assignment for that. But then you go to the Liberty Bowl and these other bowls like that, you're looking at non-Power 5 teams. You're looking at Conference USA. You're looking at MAC. Those are the teams you don't really get to measure Auburn's success. But are you kidding me? If they played Will Grier, that would be a game everybody across the country would want to see. So we'll see bowl selection on December 2nd after they announce those playoffs. And speaking of the playoffs, Alabama and Georgia playing for that next week in Atlanta. We have final thoughts from here in Tuscaloosa coming up as the postgame show winding down here till 8 o'clock. We'll be back after this.
You're watching CBS 42 College Football Saturday post-game, presented by Pepsi.
Another regular season of college football Saturday in the books. Mike, where did the time go? But we are not done this year. We have the SEC Championship next week. We'll be in championship form. And as always, we have our Friday Road to the Special, 6:30. And then on Saturday, college football Saturday, the pregame show, 12 to 1:30. The game's at 3 o'clock. One final look at this Alabama and Georgia game. We're talking spread. I'm going to go ahead and say maybe Alabama minus 7.5.
Yeah, listen, and we've had to pay a premium for Alabama. How many times do we talk about how big that Auburn spread was this week, and then all of a sudden Bama covers it? You have to pay a premium to bet on Alabama this year. So when you look at those spreads, I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere around 10.5, 11 when all things are said and done going towards this weekend. A lot of people love Alabama. Don't consider them to have many holes. I think you're going to deal with really an expanded frame this week as far as spreads go.
The only thing we know about next week is the winner is going to go to the college football playoff. The loser, who knows? If it's Alabama, what happens in other conference championship games, we will see next weekend. It's championship weekend, rivalry weekend, the books, college football wrap-up the next time you'll see us tonight at 10:30 here on CBS 42.